Also of the NBA Cup, obviously the loser were the Spurs, Wemby and the Spurs, who looked great, just couldn't close it down the stretch. And then obviously, with Wemby in and out of the lineup, is kind of playing two different styles. It caught up to him a little bit tonight. I thought in the first half, Wemby was a bit sped up, where you only playing like 6 minutes in the first half. I think he was a little sped up and trying to get to it a little more, rushed a few things. He's gotten away from rushing a bit, but I felt like, and that can happen. Bigger game, larger stakes. You get a little sped up. You want to do a little more. But nonetheless, that same Spurs team handed OKC their second loss of the season just a couple days before. And everyone talked about, is this a rivalry? And I loved Wemby's answer. He said they're in a league of their own. This can't be a rivalry. But when both teams start winning, then it can be a rivalry. I love that answer because for so many years I've heard people say like, oh man, that's a rivalry of the Warriors. And I'm like, they never beat us. How the fuck is it a rivalry? Like, yeah, it produces good series, but it's not a rivalry because a rivalry, one team wins and the next team wins. And like, that's what made the Cavs a rivalry for us is we beat them, they beat us. And we beat them. And then, like you have to go back and forth in order to create a rivalry. It's just not one team winning. And so I loved what Wemby said about that. Just like, no, it can be. I saw what Shea said about it. Like, no, this could be. When you look at the NBA, you look at those two teams. Those two teams should have a lot to say in the next 5 NBA finals. Whether those two teams are one or the other, win it or not, is one thing. But they should be right there in the mix every single time. That's what they're building towards. And I think, when you look at both of these young squads, obviously OKC is already champions, and the Spurs are I wouldn't say rebuilding anymore. They've built back, with Wemby. And I think the person who gets the least amount of credit, or not necessarily the least amount of credit, but I think the Spurs are just as lucky to have Stefan Castle as they are to have Wemby. Stefan Castle is a winner. He's been a winner his entire life. And I think Stefan Castle has brought the winning ways to the San Antonio Spurs. San Antonio Spurs is a winning organization, but they've been losing for a while, and you got to get those ways back. And Stefan Castle, to me, is one of the ultimate winners. He's one of those types of guys. Not taking anything away from Wemby, but more so just showing my appreciation for what Stefan Castle is as a basketball player. He's a winner. He changes cultures. He's won at every level he's played at, and he will continue to win bigger and bigger at this level. And so I think the San Antonio Spurs are equally as lucky to have Stefan Castle as they are to have Victor Wembanyama. Does that mean Victor Wembanyama can't possibly become the greatest player ever? No, that does not mean that he can't. But when you're speaking of an organization, one player doesn't win championships. And different people carry different roles. And the role that Stefan Castle will play for those San Antonio Spurs teams right now and moving forward will be equally as important. Of that, speaking of OKC, with their second loss, I know everybody's still talking about can they beat our record or not. They're still right there, 24-2, to make a push at it. But like I said before, it's a long season. Long season. Sometimes you have scheduled losses. I'd love to see where OKC go from this. All of a sudden you lose one. You're not riding that high anymore. You're not keeping a win streak alive anymore, and all those things tend to take place. So we'll see where it goes. I don't want to talk too much about a record in game 26, and there's still 56 more to go. Give those guys some grace. Let them run their own race. They're going to run their own race. And then once it get down to it later in the season, if they got a shot at it, then focus on it. But 26 games in, it takes a while to get there. We're still months away. Got to let them guys run their own race. But I love to hear some of them say, like, yeah, we're going for it. I respect that because I was that same way. Like, yo, we're going for it. Recap. Jalen Brunson, Emirates NBA Cup MVP. Scored 25 points. However, the award was not just for the championship game, but the entire NBA Cup, and Jalen was more than deserving led the NBA Cup in scoring, had another great game to seal the deal today. Got a lot of help today, obviously. OG Anunoby played incredible. Jordan Clarkson played incredible. Mitchell Robinson played incredible. Tyler Kolek played incredible. Got a lot of help today, but you put yourself in position for those guys to provide that help with the play of Jalen Brunson and led them to an NBA Cup. I think, I was very interested in seeing if the Knicks won, were the Knicks fans going to act like they acted when they won a first round and second round playoff series and they're shutting the city streets down. I was wondering if they were going to do that tonight. I heard Spike said he don't want a banner, whereas Mike Brown was yelling about the banner. So I think there's a little confusion amongst Knicks Nation on what banner should be hung in Madison Square Garden. If you think banners should be hung for the in-season tournament, let us know at Draymond Green at Odyssey.com. But, I think everybody's opinions differ. I'll be honest, when I was watching after they won, I was sitting there, I saw big smiles, and I was like, that's dope. I was like, man, I wonder how close does that feeling feel to like winning the NBA championship? On one hand, I know it's a great feeling because you won $500,000+. So I know that feels great, but I wonder how close this feels to like that feeling. Needless to say, anytime you have the opportunity to win anything and, win a trophy and money for that matter, I think we all want to win. But in saying that, I think the one thing that I noticed with the Knicks, especially under Mike Brown, is they push the ball way more. Anytime there's a change of possession, you see Mike Brown on the sideline, like, run, trying to get those guys to play faster. Naturally, Jalen Brunson plays a slower game. Not that he's slow. He just slows everything down a bit. Karl Anthony Towns naturally play a slower game. So I think Mike Brown getting them to speed up is like ultimately knowing most of the time we're probably going to slow it down. But when we got the opportunity to run, at least run, put pressure on the defense. If we ain't got nothing, we're going to get it back to one of those guys. Game going to slow down a bit anyway. But I think that's the one big thing that I've noticed. And then Mike Brown being willing to go away from the traditional lineups. He's really leaning into his bench, leaning into different guys on different nights, helping and being the guys. And, it makes a difference for a team. Karl Anthony Towns goes down for a bit there, doesn't play, and Mitchell Robinson's balling. Mikal Bridges probably didn't play for majority, if any, of the fourth quarter. Those aren't normally moves that you would have seen made by the New York Knicks. And sometimes you have to pull those strings in order to win games. And that showed tonight for the New York Knicks and how Mike Brown is approaching it with that roster and actually leaning into the depth that they have. So it's beautiful to see. Beautiful to see Jordan Clarkson playing the way he's playing on both sides of the basketball, being that spark plug off the bench. Again, Mike Brown using that and pushing that. Deuce McBride has been one that's played a lot, trying some other pieces. Like, again, I think all of that stuff makes a difference when you're trying to win at a high rate. You have to ultimately see what works best in your team. I think Mike Brown is pulling those right strings and finding what works for that group.